Hello, Savannah. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to Candidly, Kesha. Another week of updates of the city of Savannah, as well as current events and things that you should know. So listen, I'm looking at my notes here and trying to bring you up to speed on a few things that I think you should know and should be cognizant of. One of the things that we have decided is to, in as much as we are in an unfair fight at the city of Savannah, we want to make sure that we are letting you know how we can make this a fair fight, right? And we want to make this a fair fight by encouraging you to engage and become a part of the political process. And what that means is, in as much as we've asked you to go to the polls and vote, that's a huge task. It's a monumental task, but how many of you know voting is an honor and a privilege? It's a opportunity for us to repay our ancestors who fought so hard for us to have this right. And for those of you who, if you're not an African American or if you're not a woman, and you've always enjoyed the privilege of voting by way of your lineage, we want you too to pay attention and plug into the political process, because I now know that there are more of you who get it than don't. There are more of you who get that we have to approach our citizenry with equity. We have to approach our local governments, state governments, and national governments with a non-biased mindset, right? And so what that said, what does that look like? What does that look like? That looks like us looking out for the least of us. And that looks like us letting those who have always won that they cannot take all. You can win and you can still have what it is that you work for and what you feel like you deserve, We're just seeing that you can't have it all. And so for far too long, the winners have taken way too much in Savannah. And so in 2019, there were a group of local citizens in Savannah who rose up and they said the same thing that I'm saying now, that it's time out for the winners taking all, and it's time to incorporate more equity in the allocation of our resources by way of the city coffers, the city services, our city bonds, right? We want to send a message, a resounding message, that it is now time for us to make this more consistent with everybody winning in Savannah in some regard. Listen, I've said this before. Savannah makes up, let's see, we are a community who boast of being the tourist capital of this region, right? Of the Southeast region. We boast of being the hostess city of the South. Huge tourism industry. I don't know that there's another city that can beat us in cuisine. I mean, we have the finest cuisine probably in the nation. I'm convinced of that. In addition, we generate the most money for Georgia, only second to Atlanta. So that by itself makes us a pretty big deal. Globally, we have one of the largest ports in the nation, the top 3 largest ports in the nation. With all of that resource and all of that good, we still have issues that plague our community where there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance in that equity. There's an imbalance in that lack. And what we want to do is start to shift. We want to start to shift where those pieces are concerned. So here are a couple of updates for you in terms of things that your older woman has been working on. And I'm trying to locate here. It's hard for me to multitask. I think they made some changes here, so we have it here now. Okay, let's go here. What are we doing? Okie dokie smokies. There we go. I just need to share this to my page, to my Alderwoman page. And then we're going to share this too. I guess we just share it to everybody. Yeah, how about that? Okay, so during the last council meeting, I had an opportunity to represent at least a community of about 35 citizens who are interested in a plastics resolution. This is a group that I have been working, at least 1 or 2 representatives from the group I've worked closely with over the last year. This was no particular big deal in that we had an established relationship with the entire group when we had a debate of sorts during their organized meeting where we took a pledge to make sure that Savannah had a period of time, 15, 20 years, to become a clean energy community, right? And so with that, you don't wait until you get to the timeline, the expiration date of the timeline, but what you do is you start to establish goals. You establish goals that will lead you to achieving what you set out to do by the time you reach the deadline, right? And so plastics, recycling, electric cars, charging stations, changing out of light bulbs, community education on all of these pieces, all of this is a part of it, right? And it doesn't take a year, even in a pandemic, to start the process and to get that done. Well, I sat there during that community meeting and during those presentations by various candidates as well as the incumbents. And I heard them speak, and I'm a forecaster, but I also ascribe to the notion that past behavior dictates future decision making, right? And so I saw a council being indicted, and that this was their fourth year. They were up for re-election, and they had the audacity to show up at these people's meeting, having never given consideration to anything that they were talking about with regard to conservation or environmental issues. There was no real serious interest. There was no political will to get anything done. And so while at this meeting, as I had several other meetings, from meeting with individuals who were interested in crime issues, meeting with individuals who were interested in issues related to poverty, housing, economic advancement, support for small and marginalized businesses, I was inclined to do there what I had done for them. Because you see, at the end of the day, the interest of Savannahans is my interest. I am interested in what our taxpayers are interested in. I am interested in what's going to move the needle and bring us closer to enjoying a community free of crime, a community of harmony, a community where we as citizens of Savannah love Savannah in as much as our tourists and our visitors love Savannah. A community that offers as much benefits to her citizens and her residents as much as she offers developers and contractors. Yeah. It was easy for me to ascribe to that, you see, because for in excess of 20 plus years, I worked for the underdogs. I worked for those people who were of the least, the lost, the left out, and the last, right? You don't just change teams very easily, which is why the tagline for my campaign was "not for sale." That meant that I was not interested in what they were trying to offer me. I don't need a ride in a private jet. I've done the Chatham Club. It doesn't excite me. I don't need a boat ride. I don't need a account at any of your big wig Mercedes or BMW dealerships. I don't need a renovation on my home that I myself and my husband cannot afford. You know, at this juncture, it's proven to me that we didn't even need his job, right? For full disclosure, my husband worked at the Savannah College of Art and Design in excess of 20 years. Yes. And since my time on council, that position was threatened. Yeah, the message came to me where the mayor and Tabitha Odell had a conversation about my actions on council and how I should be careful if my husband wanted to keep his job at SCAD. Yeah, that happened. Oh, and if you want to dispute it, Tabitha or Van, if you want to dispute it, I have the receipts. I have the witnesses. So yeah, try it. Needless to say, fortunately for us, my husband is no longer an employee of the Savannah College of Art and Design. And it's not as a result of what their threats were. That just signaled that it was time for him to do what he is best at. And now we have the opportunity to invest in our community here in Savannah, in the young boys and men who really need his support and help. And so with that said, I don't intend to continue to throw the resources of my family on a sword. Most of you know that I lost my career at the Rape Crisis Center because I stood up, spoke up, and spoke out against the atrocities that were done here in our criminal justice system. And quite frankly, because of the deficits and the deficiency where the city was involved, and that they did not assure that their residents, their citizens who experienced the most egregious crime was being taken care of adequately. I now am in position where we can assure moderately. My hands have been tied by the proverbial net of the mayor and his maneuvering, where we can't get much on the agenda. Going back to the agenda and what I was trying to do for those citizens of individuals who were advocating for a plastics resolution. They work hard on this. It's not easy doing the research, checking out communities who have best practices, putting the language together that would speak to what our city could essentially do, where the issue related to saving our environment is concerned. I attempted during the meeting. I love receipts. I love recordings. You could go back and look at the last meeting. I petitioned the mayor for my voice to be heard so that I could ask that the plastics resolution be considered, anti-plastics, that is. And he ignored me. And it was intentional because, behind the scenes, I had already sent an email to every single council member of every single district in Savannah, including the city attorney, the city clerk, the assistant city manager, the city manager, as well as the city manager's assistant. And guess what else? I also included all of those activists and advocates who were pushing for this resolution and who were tired of asking. And guess what happened? The mayor ignored my voice. And the city manager lied. But the beauty of all of that is the citizens of Savannah saw it. And so you people, you now have a choice, my dear friends. You have a choice, because now you see that I am one vote and one voice, but if that vote and that voice is stagnated by the manipulation and the maneuvering of a process and of a mayor who essentially doesn't have the political will and whose only desire is to string people along. And so I said at the beginning of this year that it's shots fired season. We can no longer play patty cake. No longer will I be held to a higher standard as a woman to go along to get along. Because I am convinced that if I were male, this would not be happening to this post one position. I said all along that we did not come here to play the game. We came here to change the game. Playing the game is when you offer a trade-off for something else, right? Playing the game is when you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Playing the game is if you give a little here, I'll give a little there. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is the only interest I have and the only thing that I fight for are those things and those people who are consistent with being deficient in areas where there's already lack. If I'm fighting for poor people, if I'm fighting for individuals who don't have housing, what do I have to trade off? If I'm fighting for individuals who work within the hospitality industry who are not making a livable wage, what do I have to trade off? How do I network on behalf of individuals who are not being adequately represented as a small and marginalized business? Like, really? So when you decide not to get caught up in somebody's insanity, when you decide not to go down that rabbit hole, and so here's what I have to remind you all of. You sent an advocate to City Hall. You sent an experienced advocate to City Hall. You sent an advocate who has been working on behalf of abused women in excess of 20 years. That's who you sent to City Hall. So my radars and my spidey senses are always like pinging when behaviors are reminiscent to the actions of an abuser. You see, because what an abuser does is he fishes for his victim. And this is quite sensitive right now. But many women of domestic violence oftentimes find themselves in broken relationship after broken relationship after abuse relationships. That's generally what happens. There is something that an abuser can identify in that woman that magnifies that attraction until she's able to recognize it and then break away. That's a whole nother segment. I'll have to have my dear friend Karen Alston on here to talk to us about domestic violence and the cycles and the psychology of such when it comes to victimization. But what we recognize as advocates in domestic violence is that there's what we call a cycle of violence, right? It's like you have the relationship, everything's going well, something happens, the verbal abuse starts, it gets worse, the emotional abuse starts, it gets worse, and then that's a prelude to making the physical abuse a little bit easier, right? It starts with you getting jacked up, maybe having your face grabbed, maybe being smacked, right? And then it gradually escalates to a punch, to a kick, right? You get pushed down. And then the profuse apologies come, right? But in the profuse apologies, there's a part of that abuser who tries to make it appear as if what is happening is your fault. And in making it appear as if it's your fault, it makes it easier for them to enter into what we call a honeymoon phase. And in that honeymoon phase, you get the apologies. You may get some flowers at work, some candy, piece of jewelry. The good ones even will buy you a car, let you go and use the credit card, whatever that honeymoon phase looks like, right? And God forbid if you make them mad again. God forbid if you make them mad again. And then that cycle just starts all over again. And then that survivor meets an advocate named Kesha Gibson Carter, who empowers her and tells her that she's beautiful, she's smart, and that she deserves more. And inch by inch, ounce by ounce, she starts to become empowered. And she decides to break away. Didn't happen every time. Some of them decided to stay. But even those who decided to stay drew a line in the sand. And so that's where I am, Savannah. I'm not going to break away. I'm not going to break away. I'm going to stay. And I've drawn a line in the sand. And I'm going to tell you that I cannot do this without you. So, for my activists, my advocates, with the plastics resolution, our environmentalists, our conservationists, guess what? I'm going to submit my request again tomorrow. I'm going to CC every single alder person, the mayor, the city manager, the clerk, and the attorney. And I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to beg, and I'm not going to plead. I'm going to follow the process. Ladies and gentlemen, we are following the rules. The media would have you think that we're not, but we're following the rules. as best we can. In fact, we're doing better than as best we can, given the fact that it's not fair. This doesn't happen in any other city in the United States. We're not going to break away, Savannah. We're here to stay. Because as laborious and as tiresome as this is, you are worth it. You are worth it. Not so much where my family is concerned, because they are the ones who get the short end of the stick. But I ascribe to a faith that tells me that if he brings you to it, he will keep you through it. And so with that said, we'll go forth. But I want to encourage you who have an interest. If you live in this city, if there's something that you desire, if you voted in this slate of elected officials and you want something done in your community, just as the residents of the West Side, God bless them. They too mobilized, engaged, got active. Now, the disservice by way of this administration is we ask you all to go to the polls and vote for us. We ask you to go back to the polls on December 3rd and vote again. Not only did you vote in November of 2019, but you voted in December of 2019 in record numbers. Chatham County is on the map. The citizens of Savannah are serious about their municipal government. The citizens of Chatham County are serious about their municipal government. And so I know you are not, but I have to say this. I don't want you to get weary in doing well by way of your vote. But I have to say it because there are some people who feel like, well, what good was it for me to vote for these people and have nothing come out of it? Well, that's what people would have you think and want you to think. But we want you to know that your vote was not in vain, but it's just a part of the process. And you know what? At this juncture, we now know that it comes down to the luck of the draw. Because who knew? Who knew? What is this the saying? You can't judge a book by its cover, and don't let the looks fool you. Well, listen. You have a supermajority progressive, aggressive. No, you have a majority progressive council. By all accounts, the last time I checked, we all were Democrats. Not that that matters where your road services, your trash services, your crime, the poverty. Yeah, you know, municipal government shouldn't even be affiliated with parties, right? Who gives a hill of beans about that? I don't. I'm not a politician. I'm not an elected official. I'm a public servant and an elected servant. That's what's wrong with the current people now. They got let this official go to their head. City manager search. Since I know that more media affiliates watch my show and watch the shows on ATR, you should know. Here's what I'm going to say about the city manager search. By far, it is the most important position within the city of Savannah. By far, it is the most important position within the city of Savannah. By far, it is the most important position in the city of Savannah, not because that city manager is responsive to me, responsive to the mayor, responsive to the rest of council, or responsible to the citizens of Savannah. most of all, the reason why he is the most important is because he is important and responsive to the staffers of the city of Savannah, who is responsive to the citizens of Savannah. And guess what? Right now, the staffers of the city of Savannah are in trouble. They're in trouble. They're hurting. And they're crying out. And I'm not talking about what I think. I'm talking about what I know, what has been submitted to us in writing. And guess what? They're not anonymous. From sanitation to city services for our community, to code enforcement and the police department. I am even HR. I am hard pressed to name one department where we have not received a staff complaint. Now, as a manager, as a former executive who managed people, I get it. We can be difficult. But when we are difficult, oftentimes we're pushing our people to be their best and do their best. But when you have citizens who are bypassing their supervisors, who are bypassing the HR department, who are bypassing the city manager's department, the city manager, and coming straight to city council, no, that's beyond the pale. As an executive, I can truly say, and all of the things that anybody can say about Kesha Gibson Carter and all the people who've ever worked for me, yeah, I pushed. I was a taskmaster because I recognized that the people who I employed were only getting paid because of somebody else's hurt and pain. For nearly 3 decades, I worked with homeless families, seniors who are nutrition insecure, youth who are members of gangs, homeless families with children. You don't have the right to check out on their watch. Yeah, so I pushed. I drove hard. I was really good at what I did. But never once in my 2-decade-plus career, and you can take this to the bank, never once, ever once, never did a staff person make a report to my board of directors that I was not fair to them, or that I treated them indifferently, or that I was mean to them. No. Was it always a bed of roses? No. Did we always agree? No. But what I did do, I listened, I reasoned, I fostered an environment where we agreed to disagree. We parted ways peacefully, where that person knew that I was being fair to them and allowed them to do their jobs. And we went on. That's all I'm asking for the city of Savannah. For 2 city managers, 2 interim city managers, Pat Monahan and Michael Brown, they have ignored our request for an external review for our city staff so that a new city manager doesn't have to walk into this landmine. It's fallen on deaf ears time and time again. You'll have to tune in next week for what I have to say about this city manager search. And at this juncture, all I have to say is the outlook is not good. It's not good. I don't know that we have the political will to seriously and sincerely engage in a city manager search that's going to truly serve the people. In fact, the fact that we had no choice in the firm that's currently doing the search. We had no choice, just like we had no choice in the current city manager. Van Johnson essentially presented Michael Brown to us. Michael Brown presented this search firm to us. And so you see, in our quest to go along, to get along, and as much as you all think we may raise hell and raise a ruckus, we let a lot of stuff go. We let a lot go just to keep the peace. But in keeping the peace, time and time again, we fall into these situations. Since I've been in office, we've had 3 key people leave $80,000 to $100,000 annually. $80,000 to $100,000 annually is the salary for jobs they've left. In gun violence guy, I don't know that he's been here more than 4 months, 6 months. I don't even think it's been 6 months. Just left. Don't believe the family problems thing. That's not true. Yeah, I know for a fact that's not true. The guy who was supposed to be over our water department, less than 3 months, he's gone. Cultural arts person, she's gone. 3 months. So leadership, continuity. It all goes back to a good city manager. So I digress for today, but listen, I want to show you a little bit of an excerpt of Men Can Stop Rape discussion. I'm going to leave you now. You're welcome to keep watching that, but I want you to join me in Daffin Park on Friday at 6:30. I'm calling all men, grandfathers, dads, sons, brothers, cousins, all men who have mothers, daughters, aunts, who have women in their wives, sisters, who have women in their lives who they love. I'm calling you for a rally and a walk at Daffin Park on Friday at 6:30. We will have just a small gathering just to solidify our unity and taking a stand in our community against sexual violence and acknowledging that you will be ambassadors for this work. For the whole month of April, we have been sending this message, Men Can Stop Rape, right? And we don't mean men can stop rape by putting on a cape and busting up a situation, but men can stop rape by engaging in conversation. Men can stop rape by educating their young men. Men can stop rape by engaging in healthy relationships. Men can stop rape by way of understanding the law as it relates to consent. Men can stop rape simply because men don't have to rape. Now, at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. There's not much we can do about the violence we can do by way of the average man in our community. And that starts with prevention education. And so for years, while I have worked tirelessly to advocate for women who were abused in this situation, it's the most painful work ever, I'll tell you that. I'm now taking great joy and pride in preventing it, because you see, if you never have to deal with that survivor who says she's been raped, my child has been molested, or that male who has been sodomized, that's the greater benefit. And so what we want to do is just join in solidarity, collectively, one unified voice. Small gatherings, small social distance, of course, but we will have information on our Facebook page related to how you can purchase one of the t-shirts, and all of the expenses related to the shirts and the mask are directly covering the cost of essentially the shirt and the labor to make the shirt. So we're not making any money off of it. In fact, I'm not even connected to the financial piece of it. So Savannah, I love you with my whole heart. And we're going to stay here. We're going to stay here. And we need you to stay with us. So put those resolutions together. Put those goals and those tasks together. Pastors, you have members who can't pay their rent. Pastors, you have members who have lost children. Pastors, you have members who are working low-wage jobs. Pastors, I'm asking you to mobilize and make a demand of City Hall. It's not enough for us to be your friend. It's not enough for you to allow us to come and grace your pulpit and grace the stages of your churches, spewing our rhetoric about what we're going to do. You need to make a demand. Good night, Savannah.